Welcome to Insight TV. I'm Helen Kerrison and I'm your host. And I'm passionate about consciousness and transformation and sharing how everyone can live the conscious life they truly love when they know how. Now on Insight TV, we'll be exploring thoughts and ideas, and I'll have a guest expert with me each episode, and they'll be sharing experiences and insights, and we'll be looking at everything, everything that will lead us to lead a more conscious, transformed life and really love our lives. So we're going to look inside. We look inside to be able to see the outside, and actually vice versa as well. The theme for this first series of broadcasts is it's all in the mind. And each session, each episode, we're going to look at a different aspect, topic, if you like, of that theme. Now, today we're going to look at how to beat the odds. And before I introduce my guest for today's show, I'd like to share 3 concepts with you. And they are, first of all, happiness comes from connecting with your inner self. Okay? And secondly, you are responsible for your happiness, and you decide how happy you want to be. Okay? And the third one is, there are no limits when you learn how to love your life. So, on to my guest for today's show. I'm absolutely delighted to have with me today Mr. Yves Veulliet. Now, Yves is diversity leader for IBM Canada and IBM Benelux, which is Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Yves is also the author of the book Turning Point, The Fall and Rise, which explores the psychological consequences and social and professional impact of becoming disabled after an accident. So it's a great pleasure to have you on the show, Yves. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Helen, and hello everyone. I'm very pleased to be with you today to share part of my personal journey and the intimate connection that exists between the private and professional experiences of an individual. I would like to start our conversation today by telling you a little bit more about me. On the 12th of July 1987 at noon, I was part of the comfortable majority of the population. I was a 21-year-old guy in good shape, enjoying riding his motorcycle. On the 12th of July 1987, at 10 past noon, I had brutally left this normal world to enter a different world. There were gravels on the road, and the back wheel of my motorcycle slipped on them, and I fell into a gully 4 meters lower. I hurt my back and damaged my spinal cord. Ever since this moment, I've lost the ability to walk. This was an unexpected, brutal experience with a lifelong implications, as you can imagine. But I did not realize this at that time. I spent 8 months in a rehabilitation clinic where I learned how to adapt to a new life, how to be autonomous again, how to cope with a low level of accessibility of the public spaces in Belgium, the country where I live. Well, you know, when something terrible happens to you or to somebody who is close to your heart, we all go through the same sequence of different emotions. Yet the intensity and the duration of these different kind of emotions will vary from one individual to another, depending on...
Sorry, Yves, how did you personally, what were the emotions that you were going through? What did you feel?
Well, actually, it really depends on your culture, your education, your environment, and also your genes.
Mm,
I will briefly illustrate this journey through different emotions that I lived to answer your question.
mm,
When I woke up at the hospital, my first reaction was denying the reality.
mm,
What, me? Not able to walk again? No way. You'll see me quite soon in the rehab center, standing up and making one step after another. Then you realize that despite your efforts, your legs do not obey to your commands. Then comes the anger period. Why me? I'm not a bad person. What
mm,
are they doing in these research
mm,
centers? Instead of sending people out onto the moon, use this money to make people like me walk again.
mm,
You know? Then comes the what I call the depression stage.
mm,
My life is over. I won't ride my motorcycle anymore.
mm,
I won't walk in the forest or on the beach anymore.
mm.
I won't dance again. Well, although for this last one, I'm not sure that this is a big loss, really.
You're not sure that that's a loss to mankind?
And above all, what's the main preoccupation of a young guy of 21?
Yeah.
Social inclusion? Work? Business? Of course not. Girls.
Uh,
Charm them, attract them and more. And I don't think, to be honest with you, that a wheelchair is a weapon of mass seduction.
no, no. I think you've had the experience of that. And
Absolutely.
what was the impact and effect actually on those around you, like your family, your mum and your dad, those who were close to you? How did they um, how did they adapt emotionally to the change?
Well, it's very difficult for the people around you because
Mm,
this emotional journey is not a one-way journey.
mm,
I mean, if you face some health issues, for instance, you can navigate between depression and anger back and forth. And
mm,
this is quite disturbing for your relatives, your friends, your parents, etc.,
mm,
because they don't know. One day you look fine, and the other day you look so sad. They
mm,
don't know what they can do. They feel powerless, I would say.
mm, mm, mm,
And this is also true that some people may get stuck in the depression phase for the rest of their life.
mm,
Well, however, after a certain period of time, most of us realize that if, as a matter of fact, you've lost many of the cards Mother Nature gave you when you were born, you still have some in your hands, and that
mm.
is up to you to play them smartly and as
Mm.
wisely as possible.
So what was it? What was it? Because you're a successful business person. You know your career. You travel. You have a highly responsible job in a great company, IBM. And what was it that made the difference for you? What enabled you to achieve all that?
Well, after all these different set of emotions that you go through,
Mm,
then comes a time when you start thinking of your role in the society,
mm,
how you would like to contribute to the society in which you live.
mm,
It's just a matter of choice, right?
mm,
It's, shall I practice sport intensively? Shall I try and find a job? Shall I stay home? I took personally the decision to take part actively in the society by finding a job.
mm,
And when this road accident occurred, I was studying to be a teacher in history and French
mm,
literature.
mm,
But due to the very low level of accessibility of schools and universities, I could not continue to study in a traditional way.
mm.
I therefore started to explore the world of work with a resume as as thin as a razor blade. I
So
could,
going to university or continuing at university, was that something that was not possible for you?
Not possible at
Impractical.
all because of the low level of accessibility of,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
premises, etc. It was almost impossible for me to continue. And then I could, I was lucky enough that I could start my professional career in a school in Brussels, in
Mm,
Collège Saint-Michel, where
mm,
I was in charge of transforming the paper administration into a more computerized administration.
mm,
And I had become familiarized with computers
mm,
at the rehabilitation center where I spent 8 months.
mm,
Then, after some years, I decided to explore new working experiences and, started sending out an updated and thicker CV, including a real working experience.
mm,
I had clearly mentioned my disability on the CV.
mm,
In my view, if you don't do that, the message that you send to the recruiters is that you're not at ease with who or what you are. And of
mm,
course, as you can imagine, most of the doors remain closed. However,
yeah.
one or two slightly
Mm.
opened. And
Well,
one of them was IBM. They were looking for an administrative assistant,
yeah,
which, as you know, is the politically correct word for secretary, uh,
yeah.
for a marketing department. And thanks to their long tradition of openness and inclusion, they estimated that despite the fact that I was a wheelchair user, I had the appropriate skills and profile actually
Mm,
to perform this job. It
mm,
was in 1992.
mm-hmm,
I then took different courses, both internally and externally, to develop my career.
mm,
And after having held different positions in business and public affairs areas, I had the feeling that it was my turn to help IBM being even more active in
mm,
workforce diversity and inclusion. And in 2005, I think, I
mm.
joined the IBM Europe, Middle East and Africa diversity team as program manager for persons with disabilities.
That must have been, so we met the first time around about maybe
Right.
a year or so before, because I was at that stage, I was in a previous professional life as well, working on corporate social responsibility for a big recruitment company, and Eve and I were working on the same project. We were in a project together, European project together, and it was an amazing experience. You brought so much integrity and knowledge and compassion and understanding to the whole subject of disability, um, that it was just a real, for me personally, it was an education. It was a very, very pleasant experience to learn and to be a part of that group. So that's just a bit of an aside for background. I then went on to do other things, but as you can see, we stay in touch.
We were young at that time.
Oh, Eve, we still are. We still are.
Absolutely.
We're a little bit older, but we're
Absolutely.
still young.
Yeah, actually, I was very fortunate that I could get this job because it's really a mix between my personal life and my professional life.
Mm,
My mission is really to manage and seek ways to improve IBM's existing programs,
mm,
as well as identifying existing inhibitors, I would say,
mm,
to a successful work experience for my colleagues and employees with disabilities. And I also took additional responsibilities more recently, as you said in your introduction, as diversity leader for Canada, covering the whole diversity spectrum,
mm,
as well as cross-generational program manager for Europe. In this role, I work on building a framework that facilitates the creation of values for
mm,
IBM and our clients, of course, through employee engagement, collaboration effectiveness, career path, and knowledge management for
mm.
all the generations in the workforce. And of course, being myself part of quote unquote a minority makes my message both internally and externally even stronger. And in IBM we cover different diversity areas at global level. We have gender, people with disabilities, LGBT, standing for lesbians, gay, bisexual, and transgender, and cross-generational. In addition, we also address regional constituencies such as Black, Hispanic, Aboriginal, and and so on, depending on the country or the context in the regions. And at the end of the day, in my view, the mission of any actors in diversity and inclusion in the business, regardless of its size or sector activity, must be to create an environment uh, where people from all cultures, all backgrounds, all types of differences feel comfortable being themselves and can fully achieve their potential.
And this is the key, really, to love your life. And love your life is a program that I provide, and that is a huge success because it is about being yourself.
True.
It is about making that connection, and it's not. It can be challenging because we create a lot of stuff around ourselves. From the moment we're born, we're taking on stuff, if you like. We're taking on other people's ideas, other people's fears. We're taking on beliefs and values and misconceptions and everything else, so that by the time we're coming into adulthood, we're coated. We've got layers and layers and layers of the stuff which is actually hiding, who we really are on the inside. Now, when you sort of add the adaptation that has to take place when you become disabled in some way, then it really is about, okay, the outside isn't how it used to be. Either I go inside to discover myself and really connect and bring the best of me to the world, or I stay in the outside, which is not functioning correctly. Now, how did you manage to, maybe even without knowing, make that connection and go within and overcome the external challenges?
Well, actually, your question relates to, well, it has a professional aspect in your question, which is, as I said already, there's a clear connection between your personal and professional experience, in my case at least. To illustrate your point and to answer your question, I'm often invited to conferences to speak about IBM's policies to facilitate the inclusion of people with disabilities in the workforce, and there's always one question in the back of the minds of the CEO or HR leaders that most of the time listen to me very politely, which is the following. Why should I have to hire a person with a disability to do a job that a person without a disability can do? And as long as you have not clearly answered this question, you can create the most extraordinary or innovative programs to support the inclusion of people with disabilities. You won't succeed. And my answer is clear. Employers do not need to hire people with disabilities. They need to hire people having the appropriate skills and talents to help their business thrive in the marketplace. And if it turns out that the best person for the job lives with a disability, well, so be it. The role of an employer in these circumstances is to provide a working environment which is accessible enough to allow this individual to be as effective as productive as anybody else in the role. But of course, it's my responsibility to clearly express my possibilities and my limitations as well.
Mm.
You must be straightforward. You must be honest
Mm.
about who
Mm.
you are,
Mm.
about how you can make other people at ease with yourself.
Mm. Mm.
Having said that, there are also business reasons to include people with disabilities
Yeah,
in a
that's for
business.
sure. Mm.
We can summarize them as follows. We have the business reasons. If you extend the notion of disability beyond the traditional perception, uh, for instance, with the continuous aging of the population, more and more people will be facing physical limitations which
Mm-hmm.
will require to make our products and services more accessible. One single example. Let's assume that I'm 80, and I hope you don't think I'm 80. I've been using the service of my bank online
Mm.
for years, and I'm starting to have some issues reading the screen of my PC. I would really appreciate my bank to provide me with an accessible website. Otherwise, I will consider finding another bank. And you can apply the same example to
Mm.
most of the activity sectors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thinking of inclusion represents a growing business opportunity beyond the personal experience of a person. We are speaking about business. We are speaking about individuals here.
Mm.
Another reason is innovation. If in your business you bring the society some innovative and accessible solutions, you will contribute to a higher quality of life to everybody beyond disability. It's what is true for me is also true for you, and
Mm.
it's also true for everyone.
It is, and it's about, in a way, maybe just actually getting rid of the word disability.
Absolutely
We're just talking about people
true.
at the end
Absolutely.
of the day, and you know, yes, there's a need to put the external measures in place to make our cities, our transport, our means of getting around, everything that we rely on now in our world, to make that available to all people.
I
That's
prefer
that's the challenge.
true.
The other
Absolutely.
challenge I feel also from some of the work that I've done over the years on corporate social responsibility, including disability, is in the mindset. It's being able to support people, maybe like yourself, who have not been born with a disability, but who have acquired one, to actually have that strength to tap into their inner strength and resources and be who they really are, be their best. So it's sort of like an internal and an external thing, because when they're out of balance, then there isn't that harmony, there isn't that balance. How far do you think? I mean, it's been a little while since I've worked in this field. What's changed? What's happening? Are you seeing people who you meet, who you talk to? Is there a change? Are things moving forward? Is it a more positive picture now?
I think yes.
Mm.
Based on my own experience, yes,
Mm.
but it's very very slow.
Mm.
The path is taking. It's not really. We're not speaking about years here. We are really talking about decades.
Yeah.
And the notion of universal design that maybe some of you already heard about, in other words, easy access for everybody, is the ideal, an ambitious aim. But I prefer to be pragmatic and speak about reasonable accommodation so that no one will face major obstacles,
Mm.
both in the society in general as well as in the workplace.
Mm.
And of course, to answer your questions, it's also a question of education.
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm.
do I mean? It's perfectly natural not to feel at ease with the unknown.
Mm.
And if you are not familiar with disabilities, you don't have to feel guilty. There are a lot of education materials out there to help you interacting positively with people of all. Well, I prefer to speak about people with different abilities.
Yeah.
So do not hesitate if you're not at ease to
mm,
ask questions to the person when you have doubts.
mm,
One quick example. When I took up my current role, which is, as you said already, an international role, I
mm,
knew I would have to spend quite some time in planes, trains,
mm,
hotels, and so on. And it's, kind of breaking the stereotypes. I'm labeled as a mobility impaired person,
mm,
and I spent all my time in different places. And so
mm,
my manager at that time was right to ask me this question. Your role will require frequent travels. Are
mm,
you comfortable with it, being a wheelchair user?
mm, mm,
I didn't have to feel offended. It was her responsibility as my manager to ensure that my disability would not have negative impact on my job performance.
yeah, and on
So,
you personally as well. You as a
yeah,
person. Yeah.
so again, do not hesitate to ask questions
Mm,
that you regard as critical from a productivity perspective, as long as they don't invade an individual personal space.
mm,
This is absolutely normal.
mm,
Now, I would like to approach our discussion from a more personal standpoint, I would say. We often hear about the roles of the different stakeholders that support the inclusion of people with disabilities in the society, such as the employers, the governments, the world of education, the association, and so on. But we'll seldom hear about the role of people with disabilities themselves as ambassadors of their own life, of
mm,
their own ambitions. It's, when I decided to find a job and distribute my resumes, nobody but me could take this decision.
mm,
So many people with disabilities have such a various palette of talents to offer that
mm,
it's very sad not to see more of them visible
mm,
and successful in the business.
mm,
Well, again, let's think beyond the topic of disability. As I said already, when something terrible happens to ourselves, we all go through the same sequence of different emotions, regardless of the kind of bad moments we are living. And if you had only one thing to remember after our conversation, I wish it would be the following. Nobody but you can live your life.
mhm,
Don't be afraid of failure. It's part of our culture. We are afraid to fail. But
mhm,
success and failure are two sides of the same coin.
mhm,
And I would even add that you learn more from your failures than from your successes. So if you believe that your life should be different, well, look at your situation today. Consider the different opportunities that you'd like to explore. Select the one that fits you best and give it a try.
yeah, it's about following your passions, isn't it? And it's very interesting hearing you you talk there, Eve. You know, there is no right, there is no wrong in this one. So there is no fail. You know, I like to look at this as failure is always a learning. You know, and when somebody comes to me and said, "Oh, I didn't do that very well. I failed, or I made a mistake," I said, "Okay, so what have you learned?" Because it is always there for a reason. You know, if things don't go right the first time, you can say, "Okay, well that means there's another better way to do it." You know, and
Absolutely.
that's a learning. But we are rather stuck, particularly in society today, with this idea that you have to be perfect. You have to do everything right, and you have to do it right first time.
It also relates to the education we receive.
Yeah.
Ever since we were kids, our teachers, we were punished
Mm,
for making mistakes.
mm,
And in my view, education should be the other way around,
mm.
encouraging people to reinvent themselves
To
constantly
explore. Mm-hmm.
and to face the issues and try and to be creative. The education system that we have almost everywhere around the world. This is not typical for Europe or
Mm,
even Belgium.
Mm.
It's really about reinforcing the creativity of people
Mm.
instead of punishing people for not being between two rails. You know what I mean?
I do, and what struck me also when you were talking was um, the notion of personal responsibility. And it's like I said at the beginning, happiness is your responsibility, your personal responsibility, and you choose how happy you want to be. And it's as simple as a response to a situation. When you had your accident, as you explained, you went through these various phases leading eventually to acceptance. And that was a process that you went through.
Try.
You chose your response. You chose to move forward, to accept what had happened to you, and choose to be happy and choose to be positive about that experience all the same.
I wouldn't say accept. You
Mm-hmm.
know, psychologically, you cannot accept to lose part of your autonomy or part of your mobility. I would prefer to say that I integrated this aspect in
Interesting.
my life.
Mm.
As it doesn't make sense. It was a waste of time and energy trying to fight
Yeah.
something which is obvious and evidence. I can no longer walk. So, so what? How can I integrate this factor into my life? How can I make it not an issue, but just a fact?
Just it is what it is.
Exactly, yes. You have to live with it, whether you like it or not.
Mm.
So why not trying to make it? It's not a question of making it an advantage. It's not an advantage. There is no anything positive in using a
Mm.
wheelchair. Nothing. But it's a fact.
Mm.
So just try to get rid of the emotional aspects around this
Mm.
and consider this as a fact in your life and not as a burden, just a fact. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're
Interesting response that because you could have chosen not to have that response. You could have
absolutely.
chosen to have felt really angry and bitter and upset and to use your energy in a sort of a negative way, but you didn't.
Absolutely. Nobody but you can live your life.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, I respect any kind of decision. But I think that the path that I've decided to take is maybe the most difficult one because it requires a lot of energy, a lot of, well,
Mm.
you know, you want to go somewhere and you need to, you know, no matter how far you want to go, there's always a first step, right?
Mm.
But
Mm.
still, actually, in my own experience, there are three ways to deal with what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is to say, no, I refuse to live. I don't want to be stuck, quote unquote, in a wheelchair. And you decide to end your life. This
Mm.
is a decision. I'm not criticizing, I'm not giving any judgment on this,
Mm.
but this is a reality, right? The second option that you have is to diminish the sphere of your private life. I mean,
Mm.
you decide to live in a very limited sphere with very limited number of people who look like you, who think like you, and your personal space diminished day after day, and you become marginal. You don't.
Mm.
You wake up at 3 p.m. You go to bed at 5 p.m. At 5 a.m.
Mm.
You are out of the regular
Yeah.
standard life,
Mm.
and your friends at the end of your life will be alcohol and drugs
Mm.
and violence, and
Mm.
this is another. This is what I call the soft suicide. You know.
Mm. Mm.
And the third option is the one I took, trying to find your place in the society, because as you said, you are the owner of your life.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of fact that the society doesn't think that they need me. It's
Mm.
up to me to decide whether I want to take
Mm.
some spaces in this
Mm.
society. I
Mm.
want to contribute or not
Mm.
to the society in which I live. And
Mm.
that's why I decided to, that was
Mm.
my choice, actually.
It all ties in, because we create our lives. You created your life. And that was a conscious choice, decision to take the third path rather than either of the other two. And this is so fundamental for me. It's so fundamental, and I think for you too, in how we live our lives, how we love what we do, or whether we love what we do, and who we are and who we're with, because we're responsible for that. And it comes with a choice. And going back in a way to the theme of this first series of a broadcast, it's all in the mind. Yes, it's in our physical body as well, particularly in your case, and when with people who have similar um, challenges. But primarily, it's in our heads, right? That's where the decisions take place.
Absolutely. You can have the most wonderful people around you, friends,
Mm,
relative, wife, husband, etc.
mm,
You are nobody but you can
yeah,
take the decision to do the first step. Then the family is important. The friends, etc. will give you support, will help you when needed.
mm,
But the first step, nobody else but you can take this step.
mm, mm,
If you don't do so, nothing really concrete will work. And as you said, without passion,
mm,
without love, you cannot build anything strong.
mm,
You cannot, you don't build a house on sand, right?
mm,
And passion and love is really the the without it you cannot build anything
mm.
lasting for long.
And you know what? The first love, that is the love for yourself,
Definitely.
the love and respect that you for yourself, the esteem you hold yourself in, that is so, so fundamental. You know,
Absolutely.
if you don't love yourself, if you're not, like you said, earlier on, at ease with yourself, nobody else can be.
And people feel it.
Hmm.
People feel if you're comfortable with who you are and how to interact with other people. People can feel this,
Yeah.
and it's really it's going beyond the traditional way of communicating between two persons.
Hmm.
It's really something beyond this. It's really kind of instinct.
Yeah.
It's almost an instinct thing.
It's that it's that energy. It's energetic. We transmit an energy. We have a frequency, a vibration that transmits, and that's often how we attract people to us. And like you said, often if you put yourself in the mindset where you're unhappy, you're negative, you're dwelling on disability rather than ability, you tend to attract like-minded people.
True.
And you'll find yourself in one of those situations that you talked about where you're marginalized. You just know yourself and other people in similar situations. However, when you have a larger, a higher frequency, a higher vibration, higher energy, then you create a life like you've created, Eve.
Absolutely. It has your the way you perceive the world has an impact on your
Mm.
health,
Yeah.
on your personality, on your behavior, and it also has an impact on other people's behavior. If you're violent, you will attract violence,
Yeah.
and you will attract violent people. But
Mm.
if you're open, you may attract also good people,
Mm-hmm.
and in people will react positively according to what kind of energy, what kind of emotions you
Mm.
convey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. And I suppose the last, I can't believe the time just flies by. It's 40 minutes already, you can't believe it. But I suppose one of the questions I'd probably like to ask you lastly is, what would be the advice if, for example, imagine that a young lad, 20 years old, has just gone through the experience of being disabled at that age from a motorbike accident, and he came to you, or you knew him, or you met him in hospital or something. What would you say to him? What advice could you give him?
I would say, first of all, don't be ashamed of being sad, of being angry, of feeling depression. Don't try to reject these different kind of emotions. They must come and they will go. So let them come, accept them, let them go. It's only when all these different kind of emotions you've been through are done, then you can start thinking of considering your life in a positive way. But do not try to avoid them. Do not try to hide these bad feelings. It's normal. It's human nature. We all have this different set of emotions. We have to let them go. Welcome them, let them go. They will come, they will go. And then you will be able to open your eyes to new realities, and then you will be able to explore the external world. But as long as you have to, this is a path that you have to take. You have no choice, right? Then that would be my advice. Confront the different emotions that you will have to face. Let them go. And when it's done, you can think about building a new life. But don't try to do that too quickly. Time is time. So let things go.
That's wonderful, and I love that you said that, Yves, because letting go and releasing these things is so important. Like you said, allowing yourself to feel them in the first place, because suppressed emotions are very, very damaging. So feel them, let it all come, and then let it go. I've such wise words of wisdom, and born of experience.
Absolutely. And if you let me add one thing, competition. I would say competition is good, but not with others. Compete with yourself.
Exactly.
Don't look at other people. Look at yourself. Compete with yourself. Try to be better. Don't try to be better than anybody else. You will always find people that are smarter, handsome. Even in my case, it's very difficult, I know. But you will always find people that are better than you, but also people that are worse than you. Just try to be better as yourself, as a person. And don't compare with others. It's a waste of time and a waste of energy. And you will be sad at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yves, thank you so much for joining me. I'd like to just give you the opportunity to show us a copy of your book, and maybe tell people how they can get hold of a copy. It's in English and in French.
Right.
So it's been translated.
So if you're interested in knowing more about the topics I covered today, I'm the author of this book called Turning Point, The Fall and Rise, which is also available in French under the title Les Roues de la Fortune. It's available as paperback and ebook at online retailers such as Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and also in libraries, and in which I explain through my own experience what it means to become disabled after an accident, what are the psychological consequences and the impact on your social and professional life. And I also explain how to make other people, including employers, disability confident.
Wow.
It's
Wonderful.
a very lovely book, maybe the best book you can ever think of reading.
I believe there are absolute gems of wisdom in there. You've shared a few with us today, So thank you so much, Yves. It's been a real pleasure sharing with you, as always.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. One last thing, if you don't mind, you can post in your website my personal email address, and if people want to share with me when they have read the book,
Great idea.
their experience, etc., I will be more than happy to.
Yeah, so you let me know. That's actually, can you give us that on air now, Yves?
Yes, sure. It's YVEULLIET
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
hotmail.com.
Okay, brilliant. And I'll definitely make sure that gets posted and people know about your email. It's a great
Yeah,
idea.
it's also my mission to, to benefit to make other people benefit from my own
Yeah,
experience.
great. That's absolutely wonderful. So that's it for the broadcast today. As always, you can contact me at helen@helenkerrison.com. That's my email address. My website, helenkerrison.com. You can always you can get in touch with me there as well, and on my blogs, and of course on the TV site, helenkerrisontv.com. You want to know more about Love Your Life, which is a transformational program looking at all areas of mind, body, spirit, and soul, and how they connect, and how we can use our energy and connect with our inner selves to really create the conscious life that we love, then get in touch with me, go onto my site, and you'll find the information that you need there. So just a quick word about the next show, which will be on Tuesday the 12th of March at 8 p.m. DET, which is GMT +1, so 8 o'clock in the evening. And it's going to be the Insight TV Clinic. Yay! We're going to have a panel of experts, of which Yves, I hope, will be one. So if you have any particular questions you want to pose about anything that Yves has shared with us today, please do so. In order to pose your question, just go on to helenkerrisontv.com and you'll see a specific page where you can put in your question, your name, your email, and send that in. So that's it. Thanks once again to Yves, and I look forward to seeing everybody again in 2 weeks' time, 12th of March, 8 p.m. CET. Until then, have an absolutely wonderful day and see you again soon.